The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the network, producers, advertisers, or hosts, and belong solely to those who make them. Truth Frequency is a non-biased and non-partisan platform committed to presenting all aspects of the truth and allowing you, the listener, to decide for yourself.
31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start.
This is David Icke, and you're tapped into the Truth Frequency with Chris and Cherie.
It's called being in the zone. It's called, being lucky. It's called having everything go your way.
When you deal with computers, you deal with ones and zeros. And the only way that you can make a computer more powerful is to expand the consciousness of the computer.
Well, it's something bigger than ourselves, and that's got to be said.
That has to do with the self-image that people have.
Just kind of your ego being swept aside, or being kind of stomped on, or being swatted like a fly.
It really is and truly happening at a societal level.
It is being able to take what feels like ordinary human energy and mastering extraordinary power, even with a single person in a society with this kind of power. Call it the X factor.
Broadcasting worldwide from an undisclosed location high up on the Rocky Mountains, this is Truth Frequency Radio. To reach Chris and Cherie from inside of the United States, dial area code 512-904-8014. International callers, please dial 1-866-841-1065. And now, here are your hosts, Chris and Cherie G.
Coming to you live from the gateway to the Rockies. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the country and around the world. This is Chris Gio, and you are tapped into the Truth Frequency. Joining me as always is my lovely chipmunk twin flame and co-host Cherie.
Hey, everyone.
And it is October 28th.
Carol, how can we rectify this situation? I can't even find my cell phone.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us on the line, we do have Andrew D. Bashago. Had a little bit of technical problems there, but it's okay. ProjectPegasus.net is his website. Absolutely fascinating research and experiences in Project Pegasus, life on Mars. He's known as a planetary-level whistleblower. Actually, the Webbot actually said that about him as well. Very fascinating gentleman. He's been a guest on the show many, many times before. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Good to be on with you again, Chris. I know we've had some exciting broadcasts over the years.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The first one that we did, I probably listened to it about 6 or 7 times. And it's amazing because I get something new out of it every single time.
Right, well, that's what I'm going for. I'm really, I spent 10 years going back and recapturing my experiences in Project Pegasus, which of course, was the U.S. Timed Space Program at the time of its emergence, and I've been focusing for about the last year and a half or so, I think from around the time that I was first on with you, on the Mars visitation experiences that I had 10 years later in the early 80s.
Well, this is a different audience. We're on a different network here, a few new AM and FM affiliates as well. So let's start from the beginning. You're a lawyer in Washington State, correct?
Correct.
And educated at the UCLA and University of Cambridge, and a participant in DARPA's Project Pegasus program, 1968 to 1972. Tell people about that, because I don't think that some of the audience is familiar with the Project Pegasus. Right.
Project Pegasus was a classified defense-related research and development project under the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency that was launched in the mid-'60s. I was brought in initially in 1967-68 when I teleported with my late father, Raymond F. Bashago, who was an engineer for the Ralph M. Parsons Company, through a Tesla teleporter that was located in Building 68 at the old Curtiss-Wright Aeronautical Company facility in Woodridge, New Jersey. And we entered a vortal tunnel through time-space. We popped out at the state capitol grounds in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which they were using sort of as a collection area for the teleportation that was going on during that time. And that was essentially my entree into the U.S. time travel program at the time of its emergence. We would participate in different activities in New Mexico and then jump through an identical device at the Sandia National Labs, adjacent to the Kirtland Air Force Base outside of Sandia, outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Sandia, New Mexico. So when I was first on with you, I think it was back in May of 2010, I was describing my experiences in Project Pegasus. I think I did about 50 radio interviews from roughly late 2009 to the present on Pegasus. But for the last year and a half or so, as a result of leads that were, in fact, that resulted from my radio appearances, I've been exploring a set of experiences that I had not in childhood, during the early years of time travel research and development by the U.S. Defense Department, but in a program under the CIA in the early 80s that resulted from the U.S. government perfecting one of the time travel technologies that was under development back in the late 60s, early 70s in Project Pegasus, which was essentially a jump room technology. I don't know if we can say it was a teleporter because we're not really certain what the fundamental technology involved was. But I can testify to the fact that by 1980, in fact before 1980, because I was trained in 1980, the U.S. government was sending people to Mars via a revolutionary time travel technology. And so I've kind of tabled my research into my experiences in Project Pegasus, which ironically were easier to access. The more deeply embedded memories were from the early 1980s when I took about 20 trips up to Mars. And in fact, I've got, at this point, this is very significant because I have corroboration for my account. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight is my Mars training and then my Mars visitation experiences in the CIA's Mars visitation program beginning in the early 1980s.
Excellent. In 2008, though, you published your landmark paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, and it's considered to be the first written work to prove the veritable certainty that Mars is inhabited. And tonight we're going to talk about Destination Mars, but let's go just briefly, just for the audience that isn't familiar, into the discovery of life on Mars.
Right. This is where sort of this is where the ontology of my experiences gets somewhat complicated. So I'll try to give the nuances of this. I was in Project Pegasus from 1968 to 72, roughly from age 7 to 11. I never forgot my experiences. There were efforts made basically to brainwash me to forget what had happened, but I never forgot them. I talked about my experiences, for example, to my junior high, high school, college, and graduate and law school classmates. But because discussing something so unusual with such high strangeness and such low apparent credibility usually resulted in the three responses that we had been trained on Project Pegasus we would get, which is either people would believe we were lying, we were crazy, or if they believed us, they would be envious that they were not involved in such experiences. I kind of just pushed my time travel experiences to the corner of my mind and just went on with a normal life after those very unusual childhood experiences. And I was kind of in a pattern for that into my mid to late 30s, around 37, 38 years old. I was kind of in a point of impedance in my professional activities at that time. That is to say, my forward momentum. And around the year 2000, I began writing down what happened in Project Pegasus. As I went about describing those experiences at greater and greater levels of social amplitude, first trying to convince my siblings, then my oldest and dearest friends, and then colleagues, and then my neighbors. By 2004, I was publicly lecturing about my experiences. And during that 5-year period, well, then there was another 5-year period going up to where I actually began doing mass media, that is to say, TV and radio interviews about my experiences. But for that 10-year period, roughly from 2000 to 2010, I progressed from age 39 to 49, and as I was sharing my experiences, wise people were always saying to me, look, you were involved in something so far out, and we know there were serious efforts made to block the memory of people in these programs, that there's clearly more that you're going to remember. And I was saying, no, I've spent enough time on it. I'm not forgetting anything. Well, I was forgetting a major part, and I don't think it was just forgetfulness. I think it was the result of brainwashing as well. By the early 1980s, the government's mind control technology was very advanced. And what lay suppressed in my unconscious was the fact that in 1980, I was brought into a training program, and that between 1981 and 83, I was regularly teleporting to Mars via a jump room that was located in El Segundo, California. This was during the years in the first half of the 1980s when I was an undergraduate at the University of California at Los Angeles. I was enrolled, earning a Bachelor of Arts in History during the day division, and in the evening division, after taking a brief nap, I was basically earning a BS in Advanced Mathematics and Operations Research in a program at UCLA that has been taught there to civilians by the Naval Postgraduate School since World War II. And it was during those years of being immersed basically with sort of the civilian life, earning a history degree, and then at night receiving this specialized intelligence training from the Navy, that I was regularly going over to a RAND Corporation subsidiary. RAND, of course, being one of the major think tanks that does strategic intelligence development for the U.S. government, primarily the U.S. intelligence community. I was going over to one of their subsidiaries in West Los Angeles, getting a diskette, the 3.5-inch diskettes that 10 years later in the early 90s we would call floppies, even though they were these rigid 3.5-inch discs. I was picking up one of those discs, driving over to the jump room, which was at a Hughes Aircraft building, and we even have the address. It was the building at 999 North Sepulveda Boulevard, which is at the corner of Sepulveda Boulevard and East Imperial Avenue, immediately adjacent to the Los Angeles International Airport, immediately south of it. And I was taking that jump room to Mars. And so what lay hidden in my unconscious during this whole period, even the period of my public career describing my childhood experiences, was the fact that after having a fairly normal junior high, high school, and initial college experience, after being involved in these time travel experiences in childhood, undoubtedly as a result of already having done things for the Defense Department, my file was activated again, and I received specialized training in the summer of 1980 to go up to Mars, and I was going up there fairly regularly while an undergraduate at UCLA, and I had really no access to that information, even in 2008, when I began scrutinizing NASA's data from Mars, and I found by analyzing an image that bears the caption PIA 10214, that's basically a famous westward view of the West Valley of the Gusev crater of Mars that was taken by the rover Spirit in November of 2007 and then sent to Earth and provoked wide, even indeed global public scrutiny beginning in January of 2008. Well, I spent most of 2008 scrutinizing that photograph because as I initially explored it, I began finding life forms in it. But during that whole period of 2008, and by the time I published my paper on December 12th of 2008, I was not accessing my memories about having gone up to Mars. And so I was really I've really approached